So then
why aren't they letting them in?
Apples to apples, though?
Would you agree?
Assuming you think the genocide in South Africa, let's just for a moment assume that that's true. What is apples to apples is that there are 12,000 people right now, refugees, who had gone through the process, who are part of this lawsuit that was ruled on last week, telling the Trump administration to give a timeline for when they are letting them in. And the Trump administration is saying no, because they have a refugee ban for all of these people, most of whom come from places like Sudan and the Congo, most of whom are black and are not white Afrikaners. And so if you are looking at this from that, you say to yourself, I wonder what's the difference between the one and the other. Oh, okay, I see what it is.
What's going on, everyone? All right, we need to talk about this, because I was fully prepared to cover a completely different story today. Then I saw this segment, and I stopped everything, because what happens here is so revealing, so uncomfortable, and so blatant that it deserves our full attention. This is one of those moments where the mask slips, where the talking points fall apart, where the argument stops being about policy or process and starts showing you exactly what's underneath. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This is Lewis Connor, and we're going to break this down properly, because what you're about to see isn't just a debate. It's a live demonstration of how selective outrage works, how narratives get twisted in real time, and how quickly principles disappear when they become inconvenient. Let's get into it.
Asylum seekers from around the world, a flight carrying dozens of white South Africans who were granted refugee status, landed in Virginia today. The White House moved to expedite the processing of Afrikaners as refugees over alleged discrimination. Donald Trump is claiming it is a genocide.
Why are you creating an expedited path into the country for Afrikaners but not others?
Because they're being killed, and we don't want to see people be killed. It's a genocide that's taking place that you people don't want to write about. Farmers are being killed. They happen to be white.
The South African president says the people arriving in the U.S. today do not fit the definition of refugees, and that what Trump has been told about their persecution is false. All right, table. You're hearing from the South African president, and there are two bits of information happening here at the same time. The United States itself has never officially said that there is a genocide in South Africa, none whatsoever. But they have said officially that there is a genocide going on in Sudan. So why are Afrikaners being allowed in who are white, and the Sudanese are being closed out? I'll start with you, Scott.
If they weigh one against the other that way, I mean, I do think it's not alleged discrimination that these people are facing in South Africa. I mean, the law there absolutely allows their property to be confiscated. They are subject to racial discrimination. Some have been subject to violence from some reports that I have read. I mean, we're talking about 50-something people, and the people who seem to be angriest about this today had no problem with 20 million coming here, some of the worst people in the world coming here, including gang members and so on and so forth. So I don't have a lot of sympathy for the folks who are outraged today after what happened to this country over the last several years, over 50-something people who are clearly being discriminated against in South Africa.
But I think it's the reasoning for this. Allison?
Okay. So if you think about the history of South Africa, it being under an apartheid system, where I think it is 80% of the population that are Black Africans only own 4% of the land. That is because they were put in shanty towns and moved into areas where they had no rights. And so 30 plus years ago, they went through a the apartheid system ended, and they reformed their constitution under the great leader of Nelson Mandela. And that allowed for a racial reconciliation, one that this country has yet to do. But South Africa did it, and they reformed their constitution, and part of that is that the people who are native to that land deserve their rightful land back. That is not what the Afrikaners actually want to have happen, which are the white Africans, and so who are not originally from Africa, who colonized South Africa also. And so that is what they are saying is discrimination. Now, if the Constitution in South Africa is discriminatory, they have their checks and balances in that land, just like we do. And that is for them to, so if the Afrikaners don't actually like the land, they can leave. that country.
They are. They're leaving to come here.
No, they can
These
leave and
refugees
go,
are coming here.
They can actually leave and go to where their native land is, which is probably Germany.
Are you
or
against them coming here?
Holland, probably.
Holland?
Are you
yes.
against them coming here?
I'm against the hypocrisy of this administration.
No, that's not the question. The question is, are you against them coming here?
If there was actually a genocide happening, like there is in other places in Sudan, in the Congo, I'm not opposed for Congolese and for the Sudanese to come to Africa, just like I'm not opposed to Venezuelans and South Americans coming to America if they are fleeing and looking for asylum. What I am
Just
against,
these 50 people you're against.
I am against, it's not about being against them. What I am against is that they are being given special treatment when there is not a genocide happening in South Africa, and they just don't like the law of the land.
And then we get to the moment where he pretends this is all some great mystery. Wow, what could it be? This is such a tough question. Please, everyone watching knows exactly what's going on here. Because notice the framing. He immediately twists the argument into something it was never meant to be. Suddenly it's, so you're just against these people because they're white. That tells you far more about how he thinks than about what anyone else actually said. That reflex, reducing a structural, policy-based critique into a crude accusation, isn't accidental. It's projection. No one is saying we're against people because of their skin color. What's being called out is the blatant double standard, the selective outrage, the selective urgency, the way compassion and exceptions seem to magically appear for some groups, while others, facing real documented danger, are told to wait or are shut out entirely. And Scott knows that. He's not confused. He's not naive. He's performing. Watch how he looks into the camera. This isn't about debate. It's about signaling. It's about reassuring a specific audience that he's on their side, that the narrative they've been fed still holds. Because let's be honest about what's being implied here. The message isn't subtle. Some groups are framed as threats. Others are framed as deserving. Some are treated as problems to be managed. Others as people to be protected. And this is sold as a solution. We're told that cracking down here, rolling back there, attacking woke, attacking DEI, attacking immigrants, this is what's supposed to make ordinary people's lives better. That somehow, all of this will lead to more opportunity, more security, more prosperity. So the question becomes, how's that working out? Is life suddenly easier? Are wages up? Is housing more affordable? Are small businesses thriving? Because if you strip away the rhetoric, what's left is a familiar pattern. One group is blamed, another is reassured, and the real sources of economic pressure, power, wealth, influence, stay safely out of frame. That's why this moment matters, because once you see the pattern, it becomes impossible to ignore. The messaging is simple, repeated, and emotionally charged, and it's been reinforced for so long that many people barely question it anymore. But when you slow it down, when you actually examine who is being helped, who is being excluded, and who is being blamed, the picture becomes very clear. And it's not complicated, it's calculated.
How do you see this, Kevin? How can you explain this when you see what is happening here with the selective choices that are being made by Donald Trump and the words he's using, and there's no proof, no agency, no one who tracks genocide is saying that there's a genocide in South Africa?
Isn't this narrative going on in almost every country that was either colonized way back, gone through multi-generations, where the indigenous people feel they're not really part of the new society? Pick a country: Canada, Cyprus, Germany, South Africa. What is the answer to this? It is a very difficult situation. We in North America...
Is there a genocide going on in Canada?
Listen, if you talk to Canada,
No,
what
really,
happened to the
you're
indigenous
Canadian.
people in
I'm asking you
Canada
because
100 years ago, they'll call it genocide, and they were right. And the government had to make it right for them. The same thing happened in many countries. If you were a native in Canada, those school systems they had back just 50 years ago, it's horrible. That's one example. And yet, most democracies, including America and Canada, want to make it right. That's the general tone of it. Now, these are 50 or 60 people. It's a unique situation. They're coming into the country legally. You may not like it, but they are not stealing their way in. They have found a way in on a legal basis. And we can debate it, and we are, but this narrative about indigenous populations is something rather remarkable in North America.
I haven't been
Africans
also
are not
the
indigenous.
12,000 people, the
You're
12,000
telling
people
me that
being
these people
represented
came-
under
how many
Pasito
generations
are also coming in
How many
legally.
generations does it take for a Dutch person to have children in South Africa before they become South Africans? How many do
But that
you think?
doesn't make them indigenous to the land.
Why not?
The people who were born
How many
there are
generations do they have
indigenous
to
the
be there
land.
for? They never get accepted, ever?
I'm not saying that.
They
but
have
when
children.
The,
I don't
no,
think this is
that's
about-
not what I'm
yeah,
saying.
it's not about
You're actually
acceptance.
making my point for me. You're
I
saying
don't
the
think so.
people
I'm
in the
disagreeing
indigenous,
with
you. Yeah, you are.
indigenous people of Canada were mistreated from 100 years ago. The South Africans were mistreated 100 years
My
ago
point
by
is,
the
they are
Afrikaners. And so
all-
they're trying to make right by it because they do live in a democracy now, which they did not live in under apartheid. And the people who are now seeking refuge in this country don't want the indigenous people
What
to
you
get their
just
rights.
said, and I disagree with,
To get their
you get
land,
a passport.
not their right, to get their land. Just to
Well,
be
to
clear.
get their
Wait a
land
second.
is their
If
right.
If you
want
get
them
a
to stay there,
passport,
you want them to
if you
stay
have
there
a
and
passport
suffer.
in South Africa,
No, I want them to say they're living what the law says.
These are great technical debates, but the bottom line is that there's not a genocide in South
That's
Africa.
right.
And we have a refugee
I
program.
am sure there's been
because there are a lot
violence
of people
against
who are
one
getting
side or
killed
the
in
other.
other
There
parts
has
of the
been
world.
Answer
violence,
me
but
one
hold
question.
on a
That's why
second.
we
Hold
have-
on a
Just
second.
one
By the way, I'm a Democrat here. I did not defend the Biden administration on immigration.
But you voted for him.
So what it,
That doesn't mean that I
And you
defended
voted,
him on
and you voted for a
immigration.
continuation of it in 2024, did you not?
I did not vote for his policies on immigration.
But you voted
Did
to
you vote? Do you?
Okay,
but
but
you-
you
there
voted,
are
but
things
you
about
voted,
Donald Trump
you
you don't
voted to
like
extend
either,
the
Scott.
immigration policies of the last administration.
No,
The
no, no.
point
I
is-
did not vote for that.
The point
I did
is,
not vote for that.
you're in a
No.
party that opened the borders, and I'm in a party that closed the borders, and I think the American people prefer it our way.
well, he's
Close
closed the
them for all
borders
there.
to certain people.
That's
and
right.
I
That's
think
the
that's
difference.
the debate.
The people who are coming here
debate-
illegally,
The
of
debate,
course.
though, is he's closed the borders to people who are seeking
By the way, I don't
refuge
even
and
disagree with
opening
you
it
about
to
the
white
translators.
people.
I think the people who helped the American military deserve a chance to be here. As long as they're vetted and as long as we know who they are, I'm in agreement with you. If you help the United States, if you help the U.S. military, if we help brave soldiers like you were, I'm in agreement with you about that. But I don't think these things are mutually exclusive. I think we can look at these
you know-
situations.
wait, wait.
So then why
what
aren't
is
they letting them
apples
in?
to
Okay.
apples,
Would
though?
you agree?
Assuming you think the genocide in South Africa, let's just for a moment assume that that's true. What is apples to apples is that there are 12,000 people right now, refugees, who had gone through the process, who are part of this lawsuit that was ruled on last week, telling the Trump administration to give a timeline for when they are letting them in. And the Trump administration is saying no because they have a refugee ban for all of these people, most of whom come from places like Sudan and the Congo, most of whom are black and are not white Afrikaners. And so if you are looking at this from that, you say to yourself, I wonder what's the difference between the one and the other. Oh, okay, I see what it is.
I agree with you. And would
the
you
difference.
agree that the Afghans should come first?
Come
If you have
first?
50 spots, and you're only going to allow 50 exceptions here, 50 spots.
I mean, is that
we're
all
gonna
we
let
have?
refugees-
I don't know why we can't
Well,
do
I'm
it
just
all.
saying
That's all he
that-
did.
That's all he did.
For the white
So would you
Africans.
agree that the Afghans should get those spots first? That's
in,
all I'm asking.
I'm in agreement that they should be here. I
I'm
don't know.
just
I don't
asking
know
if
in
they
what
should come
order, and I
first.
don't know how many slots we have. But I'm in agreement with you that if you help the U.S. military and you are vetted and you are proven to be loyal to the U.S. government, which I don't know how you vet 12,000 of the people you're talking about.
And-
but
and
if,
you're
but if-
They do
It's
it.
literally
But
taking
but if we're,
years.
but if
Some of
we're,
them,
but if
some of
we're,
them have
if
been
you're,
waiting
if you're
3
loyal to the
years
U.S.
for
government,
that
I don't
vetting.
really
But
have a
that's not
problem
what's
with that.
going on with the 50 Afrikaners. They did not help the U.S. government. So then if it's the...
He's
if the-
asking me about the
Right, now
translators, and
I'm asking
yeah.
who should come first.
Yeah.
Well,
Because
if
they
you're
risk their
saying that
lives for
both,
us.
that
Does
you
that
think
not
if
matter?
you help the U.S. government, they should come. My question is, like, if you didn't help the U.S. government, but you're facing persecution, should you be able to come too, regardless of your the melanin in your skin?
Look, I refuse to make this about race.
Okay.
You all,
But it
you all,
is
you all
about
think
race,
you
I
all
think.
think all decisions are being made about race.
No.
I just
No,
I
but
don't,
so-
I don't
so
agree
this
with
one
that.
appears
Why,
to be.
why are the Congolese not being let in?
What's the
And-
difference between 12,000 people and 50
Can't
people?
win this
Can you
argument.
do
Start
that?
with
No matter
50.
who
No,
comes in,
but also
somebody
let me
else should
tell you
come in
something.
first.
There is
Start
a
with
very
50, the
thorough
people actually
vetting
experiencing
process
genocide.
for refugees. A lot of times they have to wait in third countries for years. Some of these people in this lawsuit, Pasito, people go look it up, have been waiting for 3 years to go through that very rigorous vetting process. These Afrikaners he just brought in, completely expedited, sent a plane to go, U.S. paid plane to go grab them in South Africa and welcome them with open arms while the black and brown people are being thrown the hell out.
All right.
I keep hearing the same defense over and over again. They came through the legal process. And honestly, that argument doesn't really hold up when you look at it closely. Because if Hispanic immigrants started arriving in large numbers through a fully funded, efficient legal system, more judges, faster hearings, proper processing, are we really supposed to believe the reaction would suddenly be supportive? History suggests otherwise, which is why it's hard to ignore that this debate has never been just about legality. It's about who is seen as acceptable and who is quietly framed as a problem before the conversation even starts. And once that framing is in place, everything else becomes easier to justify. Certain groups are described as dangerous. Others are described as deserving. One group is treated as a threat, while another is welcomed as an asset. That's not immigration policy. That's perception management. We've seen this pattern repeat itself for decades. Different groups, same script, fear gets recycled, language gets softened, and the underlying message stays exactly the same. And what's frustrating is that this kind of thinking wasn't always so openly defended. There was a time when judging people by assumptions was at least understood to be wrong. Now it's often rebranded as common sense. The same logic shows up elsewhere too. Attacks on diversity efforts, claims that certain people didn't really earn their place, the suggestion that progress for one group automatically means loss for another. And every time, the conclusion is the same. Someone else is the reason you're falling behind. That's why moments like this panel matter, because when the question is asked directly, why this group and not that one, the explanation disappears. The talking points run out. There's no clear answer. And there's another point that needs to be said clearly. Immigrants don't come from one place or one background. They come from all over the world. But somehow public outrage always seems to focus on the same communities. That's not a coincidence. This is why I've always said these issues overlap. Different groups are targeted at different times, but the logic behind it stays the same. Once you recognize the pattern, it becomes impossible to ignore. And for voters who supported this movement, thinking they were the exception, thinking it wouldn't apply to them, this should be a wake-up call. If you're told that removing one group will somehow improve your life, it's worth asking who actually benefits from that story, and whether, years down the line, those promises translated into real progress. Because if you're struggling to afford a home, start a business, or get ahead, it's worth questioning whether the blame has been carefully aimed in the wrong direction.